What is the felt presence of immediate experience? The primacy of direct experience. Or what they would call empirical, not empirical, empirical evidence. It's existential. It's the feeling. It's the observational. It's the felt presence of the observational quality that you're having. It's a certain kind of awareness even to talk about this or recognize it as its own thing. And we should have some kind of fascination about it instead of, oh yeah, it's just, reality, it's just life. It's a profound mystery. It's an enigma to us how we're even just online, just wake up every day, just keep going with it, But what I want to say is, of the felt presence of experience here, let's define that. What is that? I mean, there is sight, there is seeing, the 3D world, all the shades of light, a gradient and colors and textures and moving objects and whatever visually we take in. And then there's the auditory world where we can experience music and hear voices and sounds and all that. And then there's, I'm just going through the senses, but one sense that I think is almost prominent in the felt presence of experience is the sense of warmth in the body. And I was thinking about this last night because oftentimes, I run cold, or I just get cold, and I noticed I remember back when I was in relationships, and I didn't really have that, and so there's some kind of, I don't know if it's oxytocin or whatever the neurotransmitter is, but there's some kind of chemical arrangement that happens in my brain where I don't get cold when I'm with a partner. I don't even have to be cuddling them or anything like that. It's just something about having someone else around is warming. I don't know what that is. I don't know if any of you have noticed that. Very fascinating. But that's part of the felt presence of experience. And I almost wonder, what that's about, because it kind of freaked me out to think about the notion that I could possibly be terminally addicted to another's presence, having a partner around, or intimacy, because after years of not having that, it's still, that coldness is there. I'm like, how do I ameliorate that? Well, I'll tell you one way I have learned to ameliorate that. Kratom. Actually, back when I was married, when I initially found Kratom, I was like, oh, this is great. I'll just implement this into my daily life. Have it with my coffee every morning. Have a second dose later on in the day. And so I would do that and, ended up having a lot. And then subsequently quitting because it was just too much. Especially at that time. At that time, I was drinking pretty heavy on the daily. And you just can't put that many substances in your body. My body was like, whoa, son, stop. We cannot sustain this. This is not sustainable. So I quit. And, which was 4 days of not fun, but if you have Lord of the Rings or something to read, you can get through it. It's just 4 days of sweats and withdrawals and stuff. It's not the worst. It's not completely insufferable, but you get past it and you're and then it's kind of empowering. You're like, wow, I did that. But some years later, actually this year, actually at the end of last year, I guess, since I quit drinking, I was like, maybe I'll try to see if I can have some self-control with Kratom. And I've implemented it back into my life, and it really has helped, not only not drinking, but just that feeling of coldness when you're alone. I don't know if this is just a thing when you get older, because I didn't have this in my 20s. So to me, it's like, oh God, I don't want to need someone. But it would feel so much better to have that warmth at night and not just be like kind of in the fetal position, cold every night. Like, it's just that cold has become such a sharp, unpleasant thing. And I don't know, my mom has Raynaud's, which is this kind of circulatory or lack of circulatory kind of thing in the extremities, in the hands. I have like a little bit of that where there's not the full amount of circulation, which playing guitar has helped because you're like using your fingers, and I kind of have a calisthenic approach, an athletic approach to my playing, almost like, I don't know, call it guitar yoga. But that has increased circulation, because anytime you use a certain part of your body, especially with just as much fortitude as you can, or when you're like the energy that you exert into it, where, you know, it's like that saying where attention goes, energy flows. It's like where you put that, like the blood flow happens, and you get better circulation. That's all I'm getting to. Coldness is a strange thing. I'd love to hear other anecdotes of people and experiences with cold, because I've met, I have other friends who are like, oh, I'm cold even on like a warm summer day. It's part of the reason that winters are so tough for me, is I'm like, oh God, like, and then, I share a house and people aren't super hip on me having my room at like 75 all the time. Not great on the heating bill. I've even in past places, I'm like, hey, I want to be comfortable. Yes, I live in a terrarium. And I must have summer all year in my room. I will pay extra for the heat. It is worth it to me. Because otherwise, like, I don't know, there's this depression, like the cold and the depression are kind of some kind of symbiotic thing, like that work off each other. It's kind of like depression I've talked about before. It's like, is it a chemical imbalance or is it an external thing? I think it's both. I think like hardship happens in your life, it affects your internal world, and then your internal world can affect your external world, because you're kind of have maybe a more dystopic or cynical view of it. You might be a little more jaded, like after having lots of experiences of letdowns and heartbreak and grief, which is quite ubiquitous in this experience. I would say too ubiquitous. In fact, ubiquitous enough that it's dubious. It's scandalous. Like there's some other force, alien entities or demons or archons, as I call them in other videos, that maybe are manipulating this whole thing, perpetuating the pain, and maybe feeding off that, and like maybe after this, because obviously they've been in the shadows, like not disclosing what they're doing, makes it feel nefarious, like non-consensual, like what is happening to us, and I doubt we would consent to it. Like there's so many experiences to have in life. Why would we just continually dip ourselves in the pool of pain? Like it's masochistic. Like, and lots of people are like, acceptance, just feel it out, just let it be. I'm like, I've done that so many times. I'm over it. Like, let's move on to other things. I do want to learn. I do want challenges and experiences, but not the same fucking ones. Is that fair? I think it's fair, not just for me, but for everyone. Like, I respect myself enough. Like, we need to have respect for ourselves. It's not entitlement. It's just fucking decency. Anyway, that's my rant on that. Wow, that time went by fast. It should be talked about. I haven't really found other videos talking about this. That's why I'm talking about it now. And I'd love to start a conversation on it. I don't get a whole lot of comments or conversations in my channel, but I appreciate the ones I get. And the ones that aren't like, hey mate, you should, it's like, focus on your driving. It's like you're driving a ton, like, hunk of metal, like, while you're talking, like, and it scares people that I'm like doing these videos while I'm driving. It helps me think. Like, I am very good with physics. I'm good with operating machinery. I've been working on farms since I was like 11. Well, driving tractors and machinery. I've never had any incidents. I worked in warehouses and drove forklifts very proficiently. So not to toot my own horn too much, but rest at ease. I am in control. I am precise with my movements. Physics is one of my strengths, I would say. I have a good, like, that part of my brain is very functional. Like the academic part of my brain, not quite so much. Like remembering names and terms, flunking left and right on that department. That one is not one of my strengths. That part of my brain never really developed that much, unfortunately. I would love to change that, but who knows what happens to us early on that affects all those kinds of things. Like, of all my siblings, I'm the most, like, can't remember shit very well. It was way before I smoked weed. In fact, if anything, smoking cannabis, which I don't really smoke it anymore because my lungs are toast after the last sickness I had. I just occasionally have Rick Simpson oil, which is a great anti-inflammatory, by the way, like way better than like ibuprofen, at least to me, because it doesn't mess with your gut bacteria. Anyways, this video is kind of all over the place, but I hope it was helpful.